I'd like to ask a question to Julien about how you relate to the question of the Occam's razor, right? Because suppose you're trying to explain to someone who posits a soul that you can experiment, right? You can empirically test it, right?
Test what?
Sorry, that the existence or non-existence of the soul, right?
So on some definition of the soul, we have
Yes,
to be precise. It makes predictions, and then you can look to see if there's, that's right, absolutely, yes.
So going from there, what if they claim, you know, a theist or something, yeah, well, for X, Y, Z reasons, God will, you know, will obfuscate the thing, right?
Sure.
So what I'm saying is that then it you know, will obfuscate the experiment. It implies the question of Occam's razor, because they're putting, you know, they're postulating all sorts of things.
But
to get in the
so
way.
my answer to this is, if we start playing those games, we should all go home and stop doing science, right? I mean, so I've heard arguments like, well, evolution is not really true because God was really planting fossils to confuse scientists. If we're willing to play those kinds of intellectual games, we should all go home. I mean, anything goes, sure. But if you want to be serious and try to understand stuff, then we play a different game. And we play a game called science where we play by certain rules. Of course, anybody can say anything. Right? But if you want to cure cancer, for example, it's not going to work to say, well, I'm not going to worry about curing cancer because God decided that's incurable, so let's just go home. So these games are fun to play, but they're completely useless practically. They don't yield any understanding, and I'm not very moved by them, frankly.
No, I agree with that point. I'm saying, in your opinion, where does the postulating of additional causes kind of reach an end, or right? Like where would you, for example, the thing about, you know, God planting the fossils, like, you know, I would say that goes over my Occam's razor number, you know, propositions I would accept, but like how many propositions would you accept?
Well, the first thing you'd have to do is you'd have to convince scientists that there is a God. There's a burden of proof on that. So once you've convinced people of that, then you can ask whether this God does this or that. But you seem to presume that there is a God. Not at all a question that we could presume. Again, it depends on first you have to say what kind of God you believe in. If it's a theistic God, a God that intervenes in the universe, where you have manifestations of his interventions, like miracles and everything, that's a scientific claim, right? Because there are observable effects in the universe that God has. Anything observable and measurable, that's fair game for science. So if you're theist, then that's one thing. If you're a deist, for example, and claim that God is just first cause, so he set up the universe and then it basically unfolded according to the laws of nature, you're making a different kind of claim. So it depends. But whether you're a theist or a deist, you first have to show us and convince us that there is such a thing. Most scientists do not think that there is a theistic God, because theistic gods are scientific propositions, and I think they've been ruled out. I know it sounds crazy to say to people in the general public, but they've been ruled out. Think about it this way. We used to think, if you go back in time, that anything was supernatural. We didn't understand anything before science a long time ago. So human origins were magical. The result of war was magical. Women were witches causing all kinds of calamities. Now, in any area where we've made any progress, the weather was magical, it was God's doing this and that. In any area where we've made any progress, we don't have those ideas anymore. In fact, I'd like for someone to find one case, just one case, where we now understand things and we said, aha, we were right all along, it was some God doing this. That never happens. The supernatural is just a placeholder for our ignorance. Once we start understanding things, we don't have a need for the supernatural, or God, or the soul anymore.